I now call to order this meeting of the Gettysburg Area School District Board of School Directors on this Monday, June 17th, 2019. Welcome to all our guests tonight. Thank you for coming out. Administrators, thank you for being here tonight. Appreciate seeing you. The purpose of this meeting is to conduct the business of the Gettysburg Area School District. Public comment is welcome and issues will be referred to the appropriate board, committee, or administrator. Please know that issues will not be debated in this public meeting. Comments will be summarized in the official board minutes, which will be available by contacting the business office. Would everyone please take a moment to silence your cell phones and any other electronic devices that you might have at this time. The reason we were late, we had an executive session that started at 6:30 to discuss personnel. Roll call, Jane. Everybody is here except Alice, who is excused. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any notices or communications from any board members? All right, citizens' participation. Tanya Rays. Ray? You want to address the board concerning Vida Charter School? All right, good evening.
Good evening. Hello. My name is Tania Reyes. I am Spanish and elementary teacher. I work in Vida Charter School since 2010. I am here this evening with Vida Administration, a board member and teachers in support of the 5-year charter renewal. We are very proud of the excellent dual language education that we offer to 250 children who live in 11 different school districts. Thank you for the collaboration through this renewal process, and we look forward to continuing our positive relationship with Gettysburg Area School District. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Board committee reports. Is there anything to report?
Not this time.
Turn it over to Dr. Brown.
Good evening. I just wanted to call your attention to information item under number 10.1, just some information that was featured in the Friday update to give you information that would be attached. And all of this aligns with our adoption of the Understanding by Design process of curriculum development and revisions that were made, launching that process for our curriculum maps. So we had a busy day today with our elementary teachers, and we are beginning to develop integrated STEM units for the elementary classrooms. So, but that information is there for your information. Thank you.
And Dr. Lay, I'd like to say thank you because I know that I and at least one other board member have been looking forward to receiving the curriculum mapping information. So thank you, and thank you for attaching also the definitions sheet as well. That was really helpful.
Are there any other comments or questions from board members for Dr. Lay concerning curriculum?
I have one comment. It's one of the most thorough I've ever seen, and I look at a lot of them. And so I love that you have philosophy built into it and the research base. It's very well done. So congratulations to you and your committee for a very sound structure to build curriculum and revise.
Yes, please pass that on to your committee members.
I'd like to just bring your attention to agenda item 17.10 regarding school lunch prices, and it's our recommendations. It says that no price change could take place for next year. I want to say a little bit more. This is the 6th year at this price, and our prices for our lunch are at the lowest or the second lowest in the area. And that comes as a result of the hard work of Sandy Whitebird and her crew. It's a fantastic true. They've been around for a long time. It's not the longest time without a price increase. Back in the middle 2000s, they've gone 11 years. So there's a long-standing tradition of good, solid, hard work and sound financial management there in the food services department. I wanted to recognize them for that.
Brad, can you give us what, I don't know of hardly any district that is able to do that with food services. And the vast majority, and especially smaller districts like us, with not having the economy of scale of a large enrollment and so on, it just seems very, very challenging. What are two of the strategies that are utilized to make that happen for us?
Common sense, and hard, honest work. Our belief is that you provide good meals by providing good food and options. Our program provides lots of those. We have a production manager that works very closely with food service directors, so we have the expertise to make sure that the plans are well thought out and well executed. The menus are well thought out. And I think that ability to provide that oversight and constant supervision and the fact that Sandy is out in the buildings on a very regular basis. Today was the first day of the summer program, and I didn't see her until the very end of the day. She was out there working on those programs, making them work.
Kudos to the whole team, and I'm also guessing we've done a pretty good job of finding out who those eligible students are for free and reduced lunch. And with the subsidy that comes along with that, the federal subsidy, that's been a real plus for us, which is not always easy to do. So again, kudos to the whole team.
Thank you.
Mrs. Weichert, are you offering the lunch program again at Lincoln like in the past summers?
Yes, the summer program started today at Lincoln Elementary,
Okay.
and it runs to Friday, August 1st or 2nd, whatever that Friday is, the first Friday of August.
And that's open to anyone that,
Yes, the public can come in between 12 and 1 o'clock. Anyone 18 years of age and under can get a free meal, free lunch. Parents can buy a meal. We have families that like to meet there to just sit and talk, and the kids can run around and play a little bit. Parents can buy a meal for $3.60.
okay, thank you.
I think it's one of the examples of that hard work because it's not something that's offered in every school district. And you seek out the funds to cover it and attract quite a crowd and in a welcoming way. It's actually very nice to be a part of that and feel how all are welcome, even though a free lunch is what may be drawing them in.
This is our 10th year.
Wonderful.
Now that school is, the school year is complete, you start turning the page to next school year. And this is the time of year where most of the administrative team is involved in planning for next year, adjusting schedules, interview processes, and all of those types of things. And to that end, this week we have a full day admin retreat on Wednesday. Dr. Montmany will be working with our team. He was here a couple months back, speaking to the public regarding depression, anxiety, those types of issues. So he's returning to work with our team for a half day on Wednesday. Tomorrow will be at the superintendent's retreat at SAN, the monthly superintendent's academy. So continue to work with that cohort and looking forward to the work there. I have a couple of slides just as an update from the last meeting, and then we can move on with the rest of the agenda. Andrew, thank you very much, Andrew. So the board passed a proposed budget with a 1.18% tax increase, and then on June 7th at the board meeting, we had a time for public comment on this year's budget. So we continue to kind of work through the numbers up until the final budget vote, which is this evening, and we're able to look and adjust some revenues and various items. So I'm only gonna update the couple of slides where the information has changed. And then if there are questions on any of this information, I believe it's the agenda item is later on in the agenda at 17 point something. So revenue increases still around 3.3%, local 3.4, state 3.3, and federal 3.5. Those are the latest numbers as of late this past week, and I'd like to commend Tom and Brad for keeping up with that on a daily basis so that we could make adjustments where possible. Next slide, Andrew. Again, we're 68%, we're a majority locally funded, 30% from the state, 2% from the federal government. Expenditures, 3.6, and that's been pretty consistent. That assumes increased expenditures for contracts and agreements, and it also continues support of our 5-year tech plan, as we mentioned in the past. It assumes that contribution to capital projects, 450,000 of it would go from budget reserve this year into that to pay for the high school and elementary HVAC, which is a project we might end up moving up down the road. And that's all through the district's 5-year capital plan, and provides for $219,000 for special budget requests. Next slide, Andrew. And a majority of our budget is payroll and benefits, as you find with most organizations where the focus is people. Next slide. So unassigned fund balance, December audit, $12.9 million. Of that $12.9 million, we utilized $3.4 million to balance the current year's budget. So the projected balance, June of 2019, is just a little over $9 million. And utilizing monies for the 19-20 budget, the projected fund balance June of next year be about 5.3 million, or 7.9%, and we have to keep that within 6 to 8% based on policy. Next slide, Andrew. Those were the special budget requests. The only difference there is we've taken the range out for the music positions, so that's listed as $83,000. It's a 1.0 FTE. So the total requests are about 219, which is where the maximum was that we were communicating the last couple months. Next slide, Andrew. So the biggest change between the last 2 meetings and this meeting is the recommendation is a tax increase of 1.00%. So we're dropping the recommendation by 0.18. So it'd be 1.00, and all of the things that were listed in the previous presentation still remain the same. Next slide, Andrew. That was just an example tax impact. At 1.00% for the average property owner in the district, it's $27.91 a year. Next. That's the district's tax history. Last year we were at 0.86. This year recommendation is 1.00. And as we stated in the past, we're trying to drive kind of a reasonable number on a yearly basis and try to avoid the zeros and then the 2.5s as time goes on. So it's more predictable, and it's a little bit on the lower end. Next slide, Andrew. And then tonight is adoption of the final budget for 19-20. Thank you, Andrew. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Okay, we will now get the lights. We'll now Now move on to our business items for action tonight. 9 personnel, item 9.1, to and including item 9.5.
So moved. And a second?
Discussion. Hearing none, take the vote. Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to supplementals, item 14.1. And Tam has assured me that this is the absolute last for this current school year.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All right, hearing none. Carrie?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Moving on to business and finance, we have several items here to deal with tonight. We will deal with item 17.12 and including item 17.3.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. All right, hearing none. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. And I vote yes. Item 17.4, the unassigned fund balance. The action is to take $450,000 and put it towards the capital. If you remember, we discussed that before. That's come up several times. So,
Second?
discussion. All right, not hearing any, we'll take a vote. Mike? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
And I vote yes. The next item is item 17.5, the 2019-20 general budget, which Jason just outlined with new information.
So moved.
And second?
All right, we are open for discussion or questions or comments.
I actually have two.
Okay.
Brad, I think I asked you the last time for one of the meetings, what is the projected funds that get redistributed into the unassigned fund balance each year? And where do they come from?
Funds that would go into an unassigned fund balance would be any excess of revenues over expenditures once the audit is complete. That's if that occurs. It had been occurring on a regular basis, however, last year, as we've noted, it went the other direction. There were more expenses than revenues, with the deficit within the 18-19 budget that's expected to occur again. And as the numbers point out, that shortfall increases actually for next year. And again, the projection would be that there wouldn't be money flowing into the unassigned fund balance, that there would be money flowing out of.
Without getting into big detail here, those expenses that altered the unassigned fund balance over the last year or two, were they controlled by us?
They were part of our budget, but a lot of those things are not under something that we have the ability to change. As you've pointed out, there's a lot of a budget that is pretty well set in stone and, not something that the board has a lot of change. Now, once the budget plan starts and staff are in place that have been approved, then very little can change. Because that staffing has been established and those costs are what they are according to the contract or agreement.
What are our capital projects that we've adopted, and I'm not talking about the technological ones, I'm talking about the capital projects, would they be a part of that factor? So when we're evaluating what we can and can't do to stay within a certain budgetary framework, we have to make a decision on one or two of those projects? Would that be fair to say?
They certainly have an impact on the overall performance of the budget because they're costs that are out there.
And part of that is the whole looking at next year and making sure you keeping an eye on 10 years down the road. So not doing something that might be very helpful for the next 12 months, but then puts us in a position, say in 7 years, where we're borrowing money and the money becomes more expensive. So the 5-year capital plan is kind of laid out so that we're able to, over a period of time, say like whenever we do the high school HVAC and the elementary HVAC, that we have some money set aside for that so that we're borrowing less, our bond rating's better, and the money for the community ends up being less than it would have been in the other direction. So we control how much we set aside for those things, but generally it's to make it less expensive down the road.
There's two follow-up with that then. When you look at the capital project plan right now, and what's actually either gonna be moved up or is included in this year's budget, what are some of the major projects that are on the table here?
Remember that the funding for that capital is an average of the next 5 years' needs. So it's 1/5 of the next 5 years' needs. That feature of the plan is meant to stabilize the cost from year to year for the district because capital needs aren't always constant. The capital plan has been provided, I don't have a copy right in front of me, but the capital plan has been provided several times over the past year. For next year, it's been reviewed by the Buildings and Grounds Finance Committee and brought forth to the whole board as a result of that review. Mr. Fordham might be able to, he may have it handy, but that plan is something that has been reviewed over the last several years and updated and reviewed again.
So if we find ourselves in a position next year, and I understand the degree of the logic on the budget, but if we find ourselves next year in a position where, let me backtrack, the 6 to 8% for the unassigned fund balance that has been adopted by this board, that's locked in, correct?
As approved by the board, and the 8% actually is mandated maximum by law.
But there is no minimum, correct?
Correct.
So as we look at, not this year's budget, as we look at teachers' contracts and the capital project and et cetera, and I'm looking 2 years down the road, and if we're gonna follow the math, and our unassigned fund balance is gonna decrease because we don't have that income coming into it or being pushed into it, in order to balance the budget in 20, 21, 22, we find ourselves without potentially an unassigned fund balance or a decreased one to where we can't pull the 2 or 3 million from to make that gap, if I'm following you right. Unless we change the 6 to 8%, because we can't do it unless we change that anyway, right? The board would have to vote and say, we can go lower than 6.
Right.
But potentially, we could find ourselves there in 3 years, potentially, depending on what we adopt or vote to. No, I'm just trying, maybe I'm not saying it right. I'm looking out, say, 3, 4 years ago, and if I'm following what you have outlined in the last couple of meetings, potentially that unassigned fund balance, if we keep using it to balance the budget, could potentially be somewhere between 2 and 3% instead of 7.9, potentially, correct?
It could potentially be far worse than that.
So where would the funds come for us to balance the budget on the spending that we do now, next year, and the year after, to be able to support the projects that we're adopting and the hires and everything that we're trying to do? Where does that come from? The taxpayers, right?
Variety of sources. Looking at whether there's changes in revenue, whether there's changes in expenses, changes in programs.
You would agree with me, the revenue hasn't changed in Adams County in how many years? So I don't think we have a windfall of revenue coming down the pike.
I wouldn't say a windfall, but revenues through earned income taxes and assessed values are moving somewhat forward. They're not the same as they were 12 years ago,
Right.
but they're not stagnant either.
One clarification.
Fortunately for us, they're not.
The capital projects are they're not in the unassigned fund balance, they're actually in the assigned fund, if I'm gonna
Mhm,
call it.
yes.
So that money is being set aside and purposely to have the money to make the repairs. And that's why they're looking at the items each year and adjusting placement according to year of when those things will be repaired or replaced.
And I'll say this, our management of the capital needs of this district over the last 25 years has resulted in significant, very significant savings to the district and its taxpayers over that period of time. Because the board has been very deliberate and very careful in planning those types of expenses. One thing that has always been true, if you need to do something and you wait a year or two, it's more expensive. So the deliberate planning and the common sense used in looking at those capital projects has been one of the key factors that has us in a position where we are now, where we're looking at the lowest tax increase in the county, significantly lower. We have the next to the lowest tax rate in the county, and we're getting the least amount of money from the Commonwealth. Those factors run to me say that something's looking pretty well.
Please don't misunderstand me. I'm in agreement with everything you just said on those capital projects. I get the fact that if you wait, I get the interest rates, I get all that. I guess my question to you was, is if we continue this path, at some point, somebody's gonna have to pay for everything we're doing now. And the unassigned fund balance is not gonna be there to bridge the gap. So we're kicking the ball down a tad, potentially. I'll take that, and I'm gonna take my opinion on it anyway. So 15-16, there was no tax increase, and we didn't see a 3 or 2.8, a 2.6 or anything like that. Actually, I think it was up there, it was under 1%. After 15-16, we made it there. Just arguing what the 1% now.
Trying to have revenues keep up with expenditures.
I agree, and we're blessed in this district financially. We are definitely blessed with the people that work in our education part. I'm just saying that our responsibility is to monitor projects and where they're going out and spend what we're spending it on, because eventually, we're not gonna be completely blessed like we are. It's economics, it can't last forever.
As a follow-up to Kenny's, I'm going to focus in on the special budget requests, and got some questions for you, Brad. And the questions are based on the fact that I want to make sure that the people sitting out in the audience understand those figures. All right? So if we're looking at the social worker, full-time, $87,167, what all does that include?
That includes the salary, it includes PACERS, very significant mandated benefit, it includes worker compensation, social security, benefit package according to the collective bargaining agreement.
Okay. And I'm going to assume then that the music position is identical.
Yep. And the slight difference is that guidance counselors and people in those lines of work, guidance counselors, for example, require a master's degree.
Correct.
So we budget just a little bit higher because of the expected master's degree.
Right. Okay. And then we take a look at lacrosse. And put in there 48,937. First of all, we're talking about a JV program for men and women only for next year.
Yes.
Okay. And what other costs go into that 48,937?
There are costs for coaches for those two teams. There are costs for transportation to events, away events. There are costs for the required officials and game help that is needed for those events. One of the significant costs in this proposal is because we don't have lacrosse at all now, we need to outfit those teams. So a fairly significant portion is the initial outlay for equipment to get those teams started. Ongoing costs would be somewhat less for those items because they'd be purchased up front. Depending on the expansion, possible expansion in the future, varsity and other levels, but there's a fair amount in that cost that would be, I don't wanna say one time, but initial costs that wouldn't recover every year.
Okay. And is there a cost to parents or sons or daughters that join lacrosse because of the uniqueness of the equipment?
There is an understanding in the lacrosse community that students provide some of their own items, just as with some of our other sports, our swimmers provide their own swimsuits. But there's no expectation within the budget amount that those students are providing the necessities. The budget amount includes sticks, it includes uniform pads, it includes the uniforms, it does not include their own shoes, and that's consistent with other sports.
And by putting these 3 special requests in the budget, this is what I'm picking up on what Kenny said, that amount of money is reoccurring each year,
Yes.
and depending upon variables, could bring our fund balance down if indeed they go up.
Mathematically, you're correct. It's our view, and particularly from Dr. Parent, but financially, it's our view that they are sustainable. Certainly, the social worker position, I think everybody can see that that's going to be necessary one way or the other down the road. The music position, one of the big criteria supporting that is we have some classes with over 100 students. Those students would have to be in front of a teacher somewhere. So that need is there based on enrollments, and until those enrollments would change, that position, whether it's music or something else, the students are still there having a need to be in front of a teacher. The lacrosse issue is one that's been supported from a variety of directions. But it is an optional, more of an optional type of
I guess I'm looking at my background, having a father that was of German ancestry. And every time I earned a buck, he said, you can either spend it or save it, but guess what you're going to do? And he also taught me the fact that you have wants and needs, and I think you just explained well to me and hopefully to the public that maybe they are wants rather than needs, but probably since we do represent the parents and the students of this district, it's probably a good move to go that direction.
We believe, based on the economy and the numbers we're seeing in earned income and in assessed values, that those costs are sustainable.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hunt, then my follow-up question to you is, I'm going to use your words, you believe upon the revenue and the economy that we're in, and why do we have a 1% tax increase this year? What are we going to lose if we gave the taxpayers a break tonight and said, you know what, we're going to cut where we need to cut, but I don't think we do because we have the revenue and everything else that's sustaining this. I'm curious, what's the worst case scenario if this board tonight adopts a 0-line budget? That's it, no tax increase.
Costs you at least twice that next year.
On what?
I would take a little time to go through that exercise, but it's a fact that if you do not provide the revenue to support your expenses in 1 year, the next year those expenses are still there, that support is not there for those expenses or for any increased expenses that are always occurring. So you've lost that money twice. And the second year out, you've lost that money 3 times.
You're making my argument for me. That's exactly what we're doing with the unassigned fund balance each year. We're using $2-3 million, or whatever the percentage is, to balance a budget instead of looking somewhere else. And eventually that unassigned fund balance is not gonna be healthy enough for not wants, but our needs.
I'm confused perhaps, because on one hand, I hear you arguing for a lower tax increase, and on the other hand, I hear you arguing for higher taxes.
Because that's what I'm hearing. I haven't heard it, I've asked the question on how many different board meetings, and I can tell you, I'm still not clear on it.
I'm trying to figure out what your question is.
I'm asking, what is the worst case scenario if tonight we adopt a zero? You're telling me that it's gonna cost us triple, correct? Or double? Or what?
Double next year, triple the following.
Okay,
Can you use example of healthcare? Could you use the healthcare as an example? In 2 years ago, the past budget, we had cost savings. This year, we're expected to see, not have those same cost savings, and we're about to go into contract negotiations.
It's
So
somewhat different because in healthcare, the situation there was that the plan design changed and the costs changed and the cost went down. So let's just talk in round numbers. Let's say it goes down $400,000. That looks like, in a budget, it looks like a revenue. It's actually decreased in expense, but it acts like a revenue. The following year, you're back on a normal trend. So even if the cost for healthcare didn't go back up on a trend and stayed at that $100,000 lower level, you don't have that piece that looks like revenue to help balance your budget. So you don't have that $400,000 gift, if you will. You have to fund that through some means. And that's either reduce cost, increase taxes, or go to the one-time fund, the unassigned fund balance. So you have to watch out for those things. Right now, you have a situation where we feel that 1% is prudent. It's well below the cost of living. It's, in today's world, it just is financially prudent to take this step as recommended. To do less, as we said, would cost more. Now, in pre-Act 1, or pre-Act 1 days, you as a board would have had the ability to make that correction the following year. And if you look at the chart that was shown, back in those days, you had very large fluctuations, and you had very large tax increases. So under Act 1, you do not have that ability. You cannot go back, and if you reduce it by 1% next year, you can't just grab that 1% on top of the index next year because it wasn't used here. You can't do it by law. So you have an obligation to look at long term. A budget cannot be looked at in a 1-year view. It just cannot, not today, and be accountable to the taxpayers. You have to take a look at the long term. If you take a look at our long-term trend over the past 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, you'll see that our average increases have been below the cost of living. That we've been making good decisions, and it's been sustainable.
right, we had 0, 0, and 15, 16, and
But what happened the very next year?
what was it, 086?
No.
What was it?
It's almost the index.
Yeah. And keep in mind that last year, the 086 was when we had several very favorable factors that we made sure the board was aware of wouldn't exist in future years. So there were some unique circumstances last year that provided the ability to have a tax increase of less than 1%. And those key factors don't exist now.
I'm gonna jump in here, and I know some of you out there will probably say, what does it matter? The 8 years that I was a superintendent in New Jersey votes on the school budget. So we would put out a budget that said we need to raise the taxes 2.8%. And they would vote it down, and we would end up having to come up with a figure that we agreed on between the mayor and council and the school board. And I always thought my business administrator was nuts when he would say what Brad just said, because I never had that in an economics class. Nobody ever taught me that. But I learned that if we now had to go with 1.8, it took a lot of time and program loss or sports being cut to make up for what we had to drop back because of our budget being defeated. So I think we need to be careful with what we do, but I trust Brad in now understanding that whole process, that 1% is a good deal.
While our colleague is looking for the percentages, I have a couple things I'd like to say. No one likes to pay taxes, right? And I think we on this board are very sensitive to the financial needs of our constituents. I want to commend Dr. Perrin and Mr. Hunt for bringing down the budget request to a 1%. Thank you for your sensitivity to the needs of our community with that. I also want to address a couple of things, wants versus needs. I would be hard pressed to fully support a budget that was filled with a lot of wants. Because as I said, no one likes to pay taxes, right? And I feel confident that this budget was crafted in a way that it really does reflect needs. Psychological needs of our students are imperative right now with depression being high, suicide rates being high, some schools being blown up. We don't want that here, so I really applaud having the school, not psychologist, but the social worker. The social worker that really fills a very serious need. The music teacher fills a very serious need, and Mr. Hunt, you outlined some of those tonight. As far as the athletic team that we are, I think, going to approve tonight, that fills a need as well. So all that being said, my colleague, understandably, is concerned about the unassigned fund balance. And I can't quite read your face if you share his concern or not, so I do have a question for you. We've got about a 13% piece of our overall budget pie that are those controllable variables, right? Things that we really have control over. So am I right in assuming that if you truly had a concern that our unassigned fund balance would become depleted, we have the power to go into that 13% controllable variables and make changes. So we always have some kind of a healthy unassigned fund balance, which is critical to a healthy budget. Am I right in assuming that?
A healthy fund balance is very important. Critical, yes. Management of it is something that takes a lot of deliberation, a lot of forethought, and a lot of longer term planning. So do I have concern about the fact that there are deficits in budgets that I don't think are sustainable over time? Yes. But do I also have concern to keep the taxpayers' current needs in mind? Yes. I think there's a balance that has to be struck. We have performed very well over time, and we have to believe that since we haven't changed anything drastically, we will continue to perform fairly well over time. Dr. Perrin's goal of reducing that structural deficit is spot on. It's a goal that we, this year, have not been able to meet. To meet it would be to eliminate some of these costs or to raise taxes further, neither of which is palatable right now.
Right, and we certainly, when we're looking through that, through the whole process, kind of the needs of the community forefront. That's why whenever, even as late as last week, when Brad and Tom came on Wednesday and said, you know, we can do this, you know, it'd been easier to leave everything the way it was on the paperwork at 1.18, but we understand that 0.18 still means something to the community, so we reduced it to 1, and I think that I'm comfortable with the 1.0, both for the short term and the long term, as long as we continue to manage all the pieces of the pie in the right way. Certainly, I wouldn't bring it to you if we were comfortable with it.
Brad, just to clarify, back into 13 and 14, 0. And I want to see the jump and spike in numbers. 173 after that, followed by a 0 increase, followed by a 0.64% increase. Then we have a spike, and I'd like to know what happened that year because I suspect there's something going on. It's 2.5, so that's the year that you're talking about the index. So, but I'm not going to put you on the spot. Something happened in the budget, and I'm sure we could explain it. Then we went to 0.86, and now you proposed 1. I'm not seeing where that 0 this time around is going to put us in the break. Which, by the way, how much money is that 1% equate to?
300,000.
300,000 can't be pulled out of the unassigned balance. We're pulling 2 or 3 million out of that clip.
That would go contrary to your concern. that we don't-
Absolutely it would. Absolutely it would. I agree with you on that. I'm just debating with you. I'm trying to see where the big fallout is if we went 0.
Let me try to just provide one snapshot of $300,000. We know that we have an HVAC project at the high school and at Lincoln. We know that that's a large project and will require borrowing money. We have engaged our financial consultant, our bond underwriter, to take a look at what that cost would be. And our estimate, based on estimates of what that project would cost, is that we would need debt service a minimum of $1.5 million. 5 years before that project is scheduled, we started raising, over a period of 5 years, $300,000 a year. This year, in this budget, it would be $1.2 million. It's the 4th year. To fund that, each year, you need a new $300,000. And you're talking about debt that would run from 15 to 20 years. So you know you have that cost. Now, 1.5 million is only the minimum cost until existing debt is paid off, and then that number grows considerably. So again, you know you have that cost that must go out. You have a legal obligation at that point to pay that. You cannot raise that money year over year over year for 15 to 20 years out of a one-time fund called the unassigned fund balance. You have to have sustainable revenues. So if you want to look at it this way, that 1% tax increase funds that $300,000 so that you can do this project in the most economically efficient way you possibly can. Failure to fund that $300,000 is failure to have the ability to borrow the money to do that project. Means that project costs much, much more, and in the meantime, your students end up in this situation where the environmental conditions are not conducive to education.
I'm not debating that one bit. I agree with you. I'm trying to bring it, and I'm going to stop here. I'm trying to bring it back through because we control that 13 to 15%. And we're going to find ourselves sitting here in the next year or two, with or without some of these members, and we're going to have the SBRs, and we're going to look and we're going to say, you know what, we need the learning support in 7th grade, or we need this in 9th grade, or this in 10th grade. That it just keeps building and building each year. We can't do a thing about it, and we're going to not have the money unless we go out to the public for it. We're not going to have it. And if I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it. I just don't see how it works.
Mr. President, I'd like to call the question.
Question's been called. You have a comment?
I just had a couple, but what does call to question mean? We have to stop at this point?
No. No.
I'll make it quick.
You can speak.
Yeah.
The vision document with the budgetary informational, and I thought was very informational and educational. Got that in the mail the other day, enjoyed reading that. Even on page 2, you can figure out your tax bill, I believe. I also, like Kenny, is somewhat concerned about the sustainability long-term. Brad, I was really encouraged to hear you say about your confidence in that regarding the economy and other criteria and whatnot. I do believe for 1% increase, average of, I think you said $27 for the average family in the district, we get a lot of bang for our buck in that. In the short time that I've been on the board, we've added double-digit positions, which is incredible compared to not just other schools in Adams County, but I think across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. My youngest daughter just moved into the area recently. Part of that was the factor that I've been really blowing off a little bit about the advantages of being in Gettysburg School District, and now I've got 6 grandkids in the district. So I believe we all have a vested interest in public education, but I especially have a vested interest with having 6 grandkids and 2 kids that went through the system and had a great experience. Those recurring expenses, contracts, inflation, healthcare, all those things concern me and so on, but as I hear Dr. Perrin and Brad talk about those things and what we can do, again, if I'm going to err with a 1% increase, I'd like to err on the side of supporting this budget and what it might do with those things, with those special budget requests. We certainly have different demographics right now, and I just personally feel that we're getting an awful lot of bang for our buck, and I support the budget.
Anybody else? Okay, we're going to take the vote on the budget. Voting yes would mean you agree to the budget as it was presented tonight. Ken?
No.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. And I vote yes. All right, the next item for business is 17.6, establishing the tax rate for the 2019-20 school year. And as it was presented, Dr. Perrin said that that's 1.00%.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion. Okay. Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes?
Mike?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Next is 17.7, the 2019-20 homestead farmstead exclusions, which is a yearly procedure item that we vote on. Any
So moved?
Second.
now discussion? I hearing none. Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes?
Mike?
Yes.
Al, Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
And I vote yes. We are now at 17.8, the Vida Charter School renewal.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion.
I have some questions about gifted education and how it's changing, I believe it will be done. Dr. Perrin, do I ask these questions to you or?
I mean, outside the document.
Yeah, actually pertaining to the document itself.
Christine, are you able to answer some questions?
Hi, thank you. I'm looking at the information that was shared with us regarding gifted education at Vida. So I do have some questions, and I fully appreciate that you may not be able to answer them at this time, but I'll ask them anyway. All right, let's see. All right, the term advanced learners is used by the gifted, and can you explain the difference between the two?
Sure, I will do my best. So we are seeking to use some of our internal assessments at VITA, which includes assessments both in English and Spanish, to identify all of our students who have the potential to access higher learning, either advanced coursework or enrichment. And these include students who might not be identified through the traditional measures that identify a student as being quote-unquote gifted. So we are seeking to serve more students in ways that can really meet their needs, even including students who might not qualify under the traditional psychological evaluations. So that's why we're using a little different terminology, so we can recognize students as being advanced and really ready for those challenges, in addition to the students who are identified already.
And so all students at VITA will be assessed for the potential being advanced learning opportunities?
The school is already using what we call universal screeners. So we are assessing students throughout the school year in different content areas, and like I said, in both English and Spanish. And through those measures, we're able to see which students have that capacity to receive some extra supports, primarily within the classroom. So this would be different from what you might envision in a traditional gifted program, where a small select group of students is pulled out of the classroom and served by one teacher, but rather we would have that support happen within their regular classrooms.
One thing, and maybe Dr. Parent, but please don't go, maybe Dr. Parent can answer this question. And again, thank you because you offered me this language. So VITA is legally bound, and here's your language, thank you, pursuant to both state chapter 711 and federal IDEA laws for evaluating, identifying, and developing IEPs for students with disabilities. We know that being gifted is not a disability. However, the language goes on to say that the public school is still responsible for evaluating charter school students for gifted support. Is that right?
That's what the state code says, right? Is that?
That's the interpretation from PDE, from the Department of Education.
So will our school district be doing that with students who are at VITA? Or is there just no GIEP at VITA?
It sounds like there wouldn't be a GIEP in VITA, correct?
So VITA would not be writing the GIEPs. My understanding is that if a parent still wanted their child to be identified through the traditional processes, that parent has to go to their home district. And this, I believe, just changed last summer with some of the new legislation. So students now, families need to go to their district of residence rather than to the charter school in order to seek that evaluation, that testing process. And so in the past school year, we've had a couple of our school districts physically come into our building and test our students. And this is very complicated because the measures that we have in our building aren't always the same as those found in the districts of residence of our students. So, and so I believe that students, families could still request that identification through their home district, but the understanding is that VITA would not be writing GIEPs and would not be serving in a traditional pull-out type gifted program.
So if a Gettysburg family requested this evaluation, and I think it's the IU that does these evaluations, depends on if Gettysburg is, okay. Just remembering for my own children. So, so let's say we have a Gettysburg family, and this family says, I want my child assessed, I think my child is gifted, and the child in fact is determined to be so. Isn't there state law that requires that student actually does get a GIEP?
Not for charter schools.
So no, because the students,
They don't have to follow chapter 16.
okay, and we aren't required to provide that.
Now, we would have to tell the parent that you qualify, but that the charter school will meet your needs this way. If you want a gifted IEP, you need to come back into one of our schools.
Okay, because that was the concern I had. I had this concern that a student may be kind of torn between the VITA program and then having to do a GIEP with us, so no. Okay. Thank you.
Christy, I believe that materials to determine if they have an exceptionality. And that, I think, is what you may be alluding to with that.
Yeah, that's true, and the information that we submitted to Gettysburg as part of our renewal process kind of outlined what the demographic of our identified gifted students looks like currently, and how that really doesn't represent our school population as a whole. And those tend to be the students whose parents really advocate for them, or who teachers may see as, you know, really traditionally being successful in an American school program, where many of our students don't come from that setting, or their families don't. So many of our families don't even know what a gifted program means. And so that was one of the challenges, is that, you know, we're providing instruction in Spanish and English, and have many students who are learning English as a second language, and who wouldn't be identified through the regular testing process. Thank you.
Any other questions?
The word amend, that the board discuss and take action on a request to amend the charter for VITA. Dr. Graham, can you define that for me?
That's the next agenda.
That's the next agenda
That's
item.
the next one.
We'll
Get to that.
Okay.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so we are on 17.8, the renewal for VITA Charter School. Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
Carrie?
Yes?
Mike? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Most definitely, yes.
Al?
Yes.
And I vote yes. All right, now we move to 17.9, the VITA Charter School amendment, to be amended. This has, I think, if I'm understanding correctly, the gifted part.
Yes, I mean, the attachment on the attachment agenda is a document created by.
And maybe I can put just a little context here. The charter that you just adopted, you've seen basically a two-page document that you just approved. But behind it are all these documents that are applications that have been filed initially in 2007, then again in 2013 by VITA for the charter and for the renewal. And that forms the basis of a contract between this district and VITA. And in their original application, they have several pages where they outline, VITA outlines how it will apply, Chapter 16, and what it will do for gifted education. So hence, we have this recent ruling. It really wasn't a change in legislation. It was just a ruling from somebody up at PDE. You see, I don't necessarily agree with it. Where that person said, well, the home districts now have to do the child find and do the gifted education if in fact, or at least be prepared to provide it if the child comes back to the district. So VITA wants basically to be out from under that contractual obligation. Hence, we amend the agreement. We've just approved an extension of the agreement. Now we talk about amending it by allowing them to scrub out that responsibility under Chapter 16.
Right, and the Hanover School District has the same two agenda items on our agenda tonight.
And that was a question I had as well. Is Hanover like us in support of renewal and amendment as well? We've collaborated with them, I believe, am I right?
I guess, I mean, I don't know how they vote, but it seemed like it wouldn't be an issue.
And currently, part of it is procedural. There's a Pennsylvania Supreme Court case that says that you can't just change the agreement without having a mutual amendment to the agreement. And that's why we're presenting this as an amendment. There's just been legislation that was adopted by the legislature. I don't think it's been signed by the governor yet, that actually sets up a new procedure for an amendment that could be differently than this in the future. But it's appropriate to amend the agreement, based on their request. The additional burden to the school district, is the child find part. And basically, to meet our child find responsibilities, we advertise. We basically advertise to the community, including the charter school community, that this is a possibility for testing and identification. And that's really, at this point, the only additional burden.
Any other questions concerning the change? All right, thanks, Bob. Take the vote. Kathleen?
I am really uncomfortable with being not on gifted education, so I think I'm gonna say no.
Carrie?
Yes.
Oops.
Technically, we need a motion.
Do we have a motion?
We don't have a recorded motion.
So moved.
I thought we did before we had discussion. Second. Sorry about that. All right. Kathleen, your vote is no. Carrie?
Yes.
Mike? Yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, item financial report, item 18.1, pay the bills. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Discussion? All right, hearing none. Carrie?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Sylvan?
Yes.
Kathleen?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And that concludes our business items for the night. Is there anything that any board member needs to bring before the whole board?
One quick question. There was a gentleman from Gettysburg Borough that stood before us at the last meeting and discussed his property at the middle school. Can anybody enlighten us as to whether or not the district has contacted him and what measures were taken to address his concerns when he was in here?
I don't know that he's been contacted, but the weeds were all
Yes,
spraying.
call.
But, perfect, thank you.
All right, so that was taken care of.
I'm curious about something. Mr. Lusk, you're in the room, which leads me to ask the question. It's just, been thinking about this actually for a couple of years. Graduation, such an exciting time. Boys seem to wear maroon and the girls seem to wear the white. So I assume that's tradition. But do the students have an option of selecting their color?
It would, we've actually discussed, potential change to adopt a gown that includes the maroon and white and for the uniformity in all students, so they can choose.
That is terrific, because my concern is you can
That's the
probably,
plan for next year.
I mean, that's fantastic. My concern is you can probably imagine really is for the students who are transgender particularly.
It's been thought of,
We
and
have quite a few of them.
it's the reason for.
Thank you, Mr. Lusk.
Anything else?
We spoke in the last meeting about possibly not having the July 15th meeting, but I think we're going to keep it on the, we're going to keep it on the calendar.
Just, can we kind of agree until we see if we change, and I know Al's working on that, but it's uncomfortable when the public comes in here and has a conversation, brings something to our attention. We say thank you to them. Is there a follow-up method that we can at least adopt or agree to that we know that somebody from the, and I'm not assuming the district obviously got back to them, I appreciate that, Tom, but to at least allow us, so we know that it happened, it didn't get slipped through. Correct.
The ones that require follow-up, the following day, we have the appropriate administrator reach out.
I know, I mean, in terms of letting us know that it didn't fall through the cracks, almost like that safety net.
I can just send you an email saying that the appropriate administrator reached out.
I assumed you would do that, I just.
Okay, anything else? All right, hearing nothing else. else, we are meeting on Monday, July 15th, 2019 at 7 o'clock. We stand adjourned.